Ritter criticism. Just reading Russia Today by now, by the moment. I have a shorter. Well, last time I could end Scott Ritter article. I will try to run now to make it possible. June 11, 2024, home Russia and former Soviet Union. Scott Ritter, the famous censor, former American Marine. Why did it take Russia so long to realize Donbass was worth fighting for? As its military operation enters a critical stage, the question of why it took Moscow 8 years to intervene remains a sensitive topic. Scott Ritter is a former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer and author of Disarmament in the Time of Perestroika, Arms Control, and the End of the Soviet Union. He served in the Soviet Union as an inspector implementing the INF Treaty. In General Suavkov staff during the Gulf War, and from 1991 to 1998 as a UN weapons inspector. Maybe he's a double agent, writing for Russia Today, ex-Marine, banned to SPF. Who knows if he was really banned, was really caught on a surprise, or he's still a CIA agent, who knows. On May 26, the Donetsk People's Republic marked the 10th anniversary of the first battle for the region's international airport. This was a key clash in the fight between Ukraine and local citizens who opposed the nationalist-dominated government that had seized power in Kiev as a result of the US-backed coup in February 2014. The anniversary was but one in a succession of similar commemorations of events which together draw attention to the fact that the war in Donbass has been ongoing for a decade. Earlier this year, I traveled to the Chechen Republic, Crimea, and the new Russian territories of Kherson and Zaporizhzhia, all locations which comprise what I call Russia's path of redemption, the geographic expression of actions undertaken by Moscow. The fourth and final destination of my trip, the two People's Republics of Donetsk and Lugansk, that are collectively referred to as the Donbass, brought this journey to a close. By visiting the literal ground zero of the current Russian-Ukraine conflict, I was able to put a punctuation mark at the end of a long and complicated passage which delved into the very essence of modern-day Russia, what it means to be Russian, and the price of Russian nation has been willing to pay to preserve this definition. So he couldn't go to St. Petersburg's PF, but he was to Donbass, I don't remember, earlier this year. So he was back in the United States, just remembering his trip to Donbass. When I crossed the border between Zaporizhzhia and Donetsk, there was no doubt that I was entering a war zone. The bodyguards from the Sparta battalion that has escorted my vehicle and we drove to Kherson and Zaporizhzhia was replaced by a heavily armed detachment of camouflaged Russian soldiers. A constant reminder of the ever-present threat posed by Ukrainian partisans and saboteurs. I was being driven in an armored Chevy Tahoe, the former property of a Bank of Russia executive, which had been repurposed for this trip. My host, Alexander Siryanov, the director of the investment development agency of Novosibirsk, was at the wheel. My fellow passenger was Alexander, Alexander's close friend and comrade Denis, and Kirill, a resident of St. Petersburg who was our point of contact with several Russian military units in Donbass, we were hoping to meet up with. So he is just in the United States thinking about St. Petersburg people he met. Take it easy, Scott. You went to St. Petersburg long ago. Our first stop in Donbass was the city of Mariupol, site of a bloody siege in March-May 2022, which saw the combined forces of the Donetsk People's Republic and the Russian army, including Chechen fighters, defeat thousands of Ukrainian Marines and members of the Azov regiment, a formation of Ukrainian ultranationalists who openly support the ideology of Stefan Bandera, the founder of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, or OUN, which fought alongside Nazi Germany during the Second World War. The last surviving remains of the Ukrainian garrison, which had holed up in a complex of tunnels underneath the sprawling Azov-style iron and steel factory that dominated the center of the city, surrendered to Russian forces on May 20, 2022, bringing the battle to an end. So, as you can see, Scott Ritter is backing his editor-in-chief, prosecuted by Nazi accusations of the Ukrainian Azov battalion. Unfortunately, it's hard to find any. I guess it's hard to find any news of this in the West press, isn't it? Mariupol suffered horribly because of the siege and the house-to-house fighting required to clear the city of its fanatic occupiers. The scars of war were so deep and prevalent as to leave the casual observer grasping to figure out how, or even if, the city and its population could ever recover. This was especially so when looking at the ruins of Azov-style planned from the vantage point of the restored monument to its workers who died during World War II, and yet, like the patches of green that mark a showered forest after the first rainfall, Mariupol bore the evidence of a city coming back to life. The southern districts of the city had been completely razed, and new apartment complexes constructed, which are populated by families whose children frolicked in playgrounds and parks nestled between the bright new buildings. Across the highway from the newly built neighborhood was a large new hospital complex, and as one drove into the center of the city, row upon row of damaged apartment buildings were undergoing reconstruction and repair work. Shops and restaurants were open, and people scurried about the sidewalks going about their business. Mariupol is very much alive, although the huge swaths of darkened neighborhoods, their buildings still uninhabitable, bear mute testimony to the work that still needs to be done. The city of Donetsk, the capital of its eponymous People's Republic, is a living manifestation of the stark contrast that define a modern metropolitan center during war. Shiny high-rise buildings, their glass windows reflecting the morning sunlight beckon, while in the streets below mothers walk hand in hand with their children, unflinching as the sound of artillery fire, incoming and outgoing, echo around them. Driving through the city, I was struck by the bustling activity at one street corner as families shopped for food and the basic necessities of life in stores fully stocked with the desired goods. only to drive around the next corner to find the ruins of a similar market scene destroyed by the random artillery and rocket fire from Ukrainian forces who still treat the citizens of Donetsk as terrorists. I was taken to the Donbass Liberators Monument, located in the Donetsk Culture and Leisure Park, next to the city's arena, where we laid flowers to the memory of the fallen. Afterwards, as I was shown the monuments to the fallen heroes of the ongoing war with Ukraine, the sound of rockets fire struck the ground. "It's ours," said my guide, an attractive young lady whose calm demeanor believed the reality of her current situation. Uragan, she said, a reference to the Russian 220mm multiple launch rocket system. Don't worry. I have zero idea about all these Russian 220mm rockets. That a female tour guide was serving as a walking resource for weapons identification to a former Marine intelligence officer who uses to specialize in identifying Soviet arms and equipment, only underscored the disparity between perception and reality, which marked the city of Donetsk, a world where normalcy was randomly punctuated with the horrors of war. It will be easy to allow yourself to become shrouded in the kind of flinching paranoia that seizes you when you are convinced that every step you take could be your last. To prevent yourself from simply fleeing to a basement until the all-clear signal sounds, you can overcompensate by taking on a devil-may-care attitude of what happens, happens. But for most, caution is the name of the game in Donetsk. While that may be randomly delivered in the form of Ukrainian artillery and rockets, you do not need to become a willing victim, especially if you know the Ukrainian enemy is actively searching for you in order to deliver a lethal blow. I have been labeled by the Center for Countering Disinformation, a US-founded Ukrainian government agency, as an information terrorist who deserves to be treated as an actual terrorist in terms of punishment. Not so veiled threat to my life. Likewise, my name is on the infamous Mirodvorets peacekeepers kill list promulgated by the Ukrainian intelligence service. Daria Dugina, the daughter of the famous Russian political philosopher Alexander Dugin, and Maxim Fomin, a Russian military blogger who wrote under the name Vladlen Tatarsky, were both on this list and were murdered by agents of the Ukrainian intelligence services. While I will have to be an egocentric narcissistic to believe that the entire Ukrainian war effort will grind to a halt in order to hunt me down during my short visit to Donbass, the fact that Ukraine has on a regular basis attacked the hotels frequented by journalists reporting on the conflict also means that you have to have a callous disregard for innocent life by standing at a hotel in Donbass, as long as your name is on such lists. Discretion being the better part of valor. My host skewed the offered room in a high-end Donetsk hotel for a more Spartan setting in a safe house used during their frequent trips to the region. I traded the fine cuisine of Donetsk that my friend and colleague Randy Krediko had bragged about during his visit to the region for the traditional soldiers' fare of fried potatoes and sausage cooked over a gas stove by Alexander Franz Denis. Paranoia is the name of the game. However, when it comes to the day-to-day lives of those men and women who govern Donetsk and defend it from the Ukrainian army, if for no other reason that the Ukrainians are in fact actively trying to hunt them down and kill them. I had the honor and privilege of meeting with Denis Pushlin, the governor of Donetsk People's Republic, and Alexander Khodakovsky, the commander of the legendary Vostok Battalion, one of the first military formations created in the Donbass region in 2014 to fight for independence for Ukraine. On both occasions, extensive security precautions were put in place to forestall any effort by Ukrainian intelligence to discover our meeting, identify its location, and attack it with artillery. Pushlin and Khodakovsky both recalled their personal histories of the time of the founding of the Donetsk People's Republic. Pushlin personally led a rally in Donetsk on April 5, 2014, calling for a referendum for the DPR to join Russia. He served as the first head of the DPR before stepping down in July 2014. In September 2018, he was brought back as the head of the DPR following the assassination of the DPR leader Alexander Sakarchenko in a bombing of a Donetsk restaurant. He has served in a position ever since. Up until early 2014, Alexander Khodakovsky was the commander of the elite Ukrainian police commando unit known as Alpha Group, following the February 2014 Maidan coup that ousted Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych. Khodakovsky and most of his Alpha Group commandos defected to the Donbass resistance, where they were reformed into the Vostok Battalion. It was Khodakovsky's Vostok Battalion which led the attack on Donetsk airport on May 28, 2014, and which led the way into Mariupol in 2022. Today, the Vostok Battalion has been expanded into a brigade seized forces operating as part of the Russian military, where it plays an active role in the ongoing battles for control of the Donbass region. The contrast between Pushlin and Khodakovsky is quite stark. Both men are confident in the righteousness of their cause and the path of history they are embarked on. But while Pushlin brought with him the buoyant optimism of a politician looking forward to a better future, Khodakovsky exuded the quiet resignation of a soldier who knows that the victory he is fighting for can only come at a cost which, over the course of a decade's of war, had become almost unbearable. Both men exhibited a deep love for the Donetsk People's Republic and a genuine appreciation for the sacrifice made by the Russian army and nation in coming for their assistance and for bringing them into the fold of the Russian Federation. The one thing both men had in common was a look of mental exhaustion whenever the subject of Russia's military intervention was raised. I couldn't quite put my finger on what causes this look until later, after our meetings had concluded, and I found myself in the city of Lugansk, the capital of Lugansk People's Republic. The drive from Donetsk to Lugansk took us through towns and villages that had previously been on the front lines of the war with Ukraine. Some of these population centers showed signs of life. Many, however, did not. War, like a tornado, seemed to have a random character, targeting some places for destruction while skipping over others. This article is huge, dude. I'm not gonna make it. This article is unbearable. I'm gonna try to do it. Today, the city of Lugansk is not on the front line, and its citizens enjoy a life of relative calm when contrasted with their neighbors in Donetsk. But war has visited them in the past, with all the violence and horror that currently unfolds in the regions of Donbass located to the south and west of the city. On June 27, 2016, the citizens of Lugansk unveiled a memorial dedicated to children killed because of the fighting that had been raging since 2014. On that day, 33 white doves were released into the air to symbolize the young lives lost. On January 17, 2024, I visit this memorial known as the Alley of Angels. There is another more well-known Alley of Angels located in Donetsk. Because of the proximity of the war to that city, media coverage of Donetsk monument, which commemorates the more than 230 children killed in the Donetsk People's Republic by Ukraine since 2014, has been extensive to the point that much of the world has seemed to have forgotten that the war with Ukraine has ravaged Lugansk as well. Since the unveiling of the Lugansk monument, another 35 children have been killed, raising the total of 68, with more than 190 additional children injured, all due to indiscriminate Ukrainian shelling. Alexander and I took part in a small ceremony marked by our laying flowers at the foot of the monument. By the time he had finished, a small crowd had gathered around to witness the sign of an American mourning the loss of their children. I was handed a book about the memorial and given an impromptu tour of the sculptures and plaques that were located there. A television crew asked me for a short interview. What are your impressions of this memorial? The interviewer asked. It's a touching tribute to the young lives that we are so needlessly lost, I replied, and a constant reminder as to why this tragic war needs to be fought and won. Afterwards, a lady emerged from the small crowd and had been watching the proceedings. We thank you for coming to visit our city and to honor the memory of our children, she said, tears welling in her eyes. She held out her hand, and I took it in mine. I took it in mine, a gesture of friendship and compassion. You must be relieved now that you are part of Russia and the Russian army is helping drive the Ukrainians back, I said. Yes, she said, her voice cracking. Yes, of course, but why did it take them so long? These children, she said, gesturing toward the memorial, did not have to die. Why did it take them so long? I looked into her eyes and immediately was struck by a sense of deja vu. I had seen that look before in the eyes of Denis Pushilin and Alexander Khodakovsky, a mixture of relief and expiration, of hope and dejection, of happiness and sorrow. Yes, the leadership and people of Donbass are ever joined by the presence of Russian troops in their territory and the fact that the region is now legally part of Russia. Yes, Russia loves them now, but where was Russia when the children started dying in 2014? Why did it take so long for Moscow to wake up to the need to bring the Donbass into the fold of the Russian nation? This is the eternal question, one that Russia today struggles to find an adequate answer for. Russia's path of redemption ends in Donbass. Here the sins, errors, and evil which combined to create the current Russian-war conflict are manifest. Questions have been asked to which there may be no adequate answer. Today the situation on the ground increasingly points to a Russian victory over both Ukraine and its supporters in the collective West. But this victory has come at a huge physical and psychological cost. While the dead may be buried and honored, the living will always have to struggle to come to grips over the sacrifices that have been made in support of the cause they were fighting for. And in the end, if they believe that the cause was a just one, and it is my firm position that they do in fact believe this to be the case, the answer to the question as to why it took Russia so long to intervene on behalf of Donbass will hang there unanswerable, if for no other reason than that the pain any honest answer will generate may be too much to bear for those who had been fighting for the liberation of Donbass these past 10 years. So this article, I guess, the answer is because Russia didn't want to fight with NATO, of course.